today is the role of startup community for early stage startups. And we have none other than our esteemed guest, Aviel Ginzburg, who has started a new journey with Seattle Foundations. And we're going to be, Peter and I are going to chew his head off today with a lot of questions. We call ourselves as hosts or moderators, but we may not moderate as much. We're going to eat his head. So Aviel, welcome. Welcome to the webinar. Could you
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about
happy to be
yourself?
here. Sure. So I am a software engineer turned startup founder turned venture capitalist. But as a venture capitalist, I've always been a super community oriented, early stage focused investor. So throughout my day job is my fund Founders Co-op, which is a $50 million seed and pre-seed fund based in the Seattle area. But in the past, I've run Techstars, both Techstars Seattle as well as Amazon's Techstars program. And now what I'm building with Foundations is a community. I'll tell a lot more. I'll give you the proper spiel. So I guess what I'm trying to get at there is I've always been very community oriented in my career. Even when I was building my company, I was the person who was always willing to take a coffee to someone, always willing to show up at an event, always want to connect people, because I think the thing that has been throughout my career is I've recognized that serendipity is sort of the most important thing. You can be very opinionated and I want to do this, so I get to the next stage. I want to do this and get to the next stage. And that's not how life works out. For me, I started working as a software engineer. Investors met me because of the work that I was doing there and said, hey, if you start a company, you should totally take money from us. And that leads to this and that leads to this. And so I like saying I'm an engineer turned founder turned VC. And none of that was on purpose. That was all just me meeting people and having conversations, and another door opened and I walked through, and here I am today.
Yeah, you use the word serendipity, and maybe to the listeners or people who are watching us on live. And here's the context. So I've been a founder for quite some time, almost about 8 years. I've done 2 startups here, based out in Seattle, and serendipity is not very natural here, at least in Seattle. You have to make a lot of effort to go meet people. But unlike the Bay Area, where there are a lot of events that are happening, there's this meetups between investors, community builders, startup founders, CEOs, engineers, potential customers, a lot of large enterprises. They're all generally hanging out at various places every single day. But in Seattle, that's not very common. So I was on the lookout and to see if there are any communities out there. I met Kirby, who's one of an investor here in local, and he referred me to Aviel. Like, hey, if anyone can actually go build a community here in Seattle, that has to be Aviel. So that's how I reached out to Aviel, and I'm super excited that once this Techstars bubble burst in Seattle, maybe Aviel, you should talk a little more about that.
Yeah,
I
and I
was
think we
excited
can.
to see this GeekWire note, and that's how I followed you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can take a step back. I mean, I love the point that you make about Seattle and the Bay Area being very different places, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But I think ultimately, let's say I'm a 20 something. I know I want to work in tech. I know I want to be an entrepreneur. Where do I go? I don't say, hey, I'm going to go to Seattle. I say, I'm going to go to San Francisco. I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to go to one of those, vibrant cities. So whether I want to do something in finance or entertainment or tech, that's sort of where you pick. How do you end up in Seattle? You end up in Seattle because you're like, I love technology. I love building. We are fundamentally a company town. A lot of the talent that has moved here and been transplanted here is people who have come to work at Amazon, Microsoft. And that doesn't mean that that's not a great thing to do. I mean, there are folks who are like, why would I not want to do this? I want to work on a service that hundreds of millions of people use. I want to have this big influence. And so for them, that is where they want to go. And so I think naturally we attract a lot of tech talent who's much more focused on that, rather than saying, I want to build a new category. I want to create a new product. I want new. It's more like, hey, no, I want to work. You tell me what are the things I could work on, and I want to come work on them here. And so with that, a lot of the folks who come here are more company folks. And then I think historically too, while the West is the pioneer world, a lot of Seattle historically has been of Nordic heritage. And there's definitely cultural risk aversion versus other cultures. And so I think those two things together have created an environment in Seattle where Why do you come here? You come here to work on something you want. You're connected, you're close to nature. You can go hiking, you can go skiing, you can find great work-life balance. And so I think naturally it doesn't attract, all those folks. Now, that's not to say everyone's like that. I'm the opposite. I wanted to start a company. I didn't know anyone in the Bay Area. I was in New York and it was the global financial crisis. So the money, everything just dried up. I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here. So I ended up in Seattle and I show up. I'm like, where is everyone? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't want to just go work at Microsoft or Amazon. Um, and so I think that is largely the problem, is just there is not the same sort of per capita density of entrepreneurial minded folks. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't, events to connect people or communities, but they tend to just lose steam. And I think part of how that ends up happening is that, I think why communities exist is that we're all in different stages of our career. And sometimes you're here and someone's here and you need to be pulled along to this level. But communities need to evolve over time, because you can't keep everything in stasis, because your career is going to change, your company is going to change, your job is going to change. And so there always needs to be this constant sort of flux of things happening, so that everyone can sort of pull each other along. So enter Techstars. Techstars was an amazing sort of organizing feature of the startup ecosystem in Seattle, because what it did was said, okay, we're going to bring this structured program that's legible to everyone. Both, are you just starting a company or want to start a company? Well, we can help you do this. Are you somebody who is currently building a company or has successfully built a company? Well, just come to us and we'll connect you with folks so you can give back to the community. And so it was this sort of great way to connect those two different sides of the ecosystem. And that was sort of the initial value um, that Techstars served. And it served that really, really well in the early years of it running here. But to the point I was just trying to make a second ago, things sort of change and evolve over time. And as Techstars grew, a lot of those early mentors were like, well, I'm not interested in doing this anymore. A lot of the founders who were coming in weren't necessarily from Seattle or had a different demographic. And sort of the community just sort of lost steam rather. And I think what is yeah, serendipity is not natural, but what is actually a great thing of Techstars leaving is, like, I love when things stop, when things change, because it opens up a new opportunity for something else to replace it. So when we talk about serendipity, I tend to think about, like, a community like Seattle needs just more people putting energy into meetups, into groups, into starting companies, and not necessarily trying to be completely I would say dogmatic about, here's how this is supposed to look, here's what this is supposed to be, but instead just sort of put things in the world, meet people, and that sort of helps everyone. So I'm totally rambling at this point. So I'll let you bring me back onto the right track. I think you're muted.
Sorry, looks like I was muted here. Thank you. So, Avia, maybe could you share a little bit about? I know you explained, why Techstars was here, but what happened to
Mhm.
Techstars? Why did they go away from here? I mean, why was that vacuum created? Is it anything to do with COVID? Is it anything to do with the community here, or the people here were very different than what Techstars wanted? So maybe could you share as much as possible? I'm
Yeah,
sure there would be some policies
there's yeah,
taken.
there's sort of there's two lines of this, so I'll answer it in two different ways. I would say, um, when Techstars was initially created in Seattle, it was funded by the local community. So the money to actually run the program was from the mentors, from the
Mhm.
local VC funds. And in a pre-COVID world, also everything's in person. And so to be in a place for 3 months, it's hard to sort of transplant. So a lot of the folks who were doing the Techstars program were also local. So it was an amazing way for, capital and talent to pull together to invest in the next
Mhm.
generation. And that's what the early, several years of Techstars, was. And it created a great flywheel, because you would have those folks would give back and invest in the next generation. Then these
Yeah.
folks would build companies and they would become the mentor. And it would look like that. But Techstars grew really, really rapidly and changed up the economics. So they changed it so that instead of the community being able to actually invest in the companies, Techstars Central was doing it themselves. They started changing up the rules that instead of the selection committee being the local community, that the selection
Mhm.
committee was Central Techstars itself. And so what started happening was that between the Seattle program, and at one point I think there were like 50 plus Techstars programs running, it became really unclear of who is the customer, what is this for. The community members are saying, why am I mentoring and giving my time to these companies that not only am I not an investor in, they're not even Seattle based. A lot of times people, I love, Techstars has this value, which I love, which is give first. So the idea is like, I'm going to mentor, I'm going to give you my energy, my thoughts, and I'm going to do that without expecting anything in return. Like, I don't need skin in the game. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to get some value from the exhaust of your energy. So if I'm going to help a company, I don't need to get anything directly, but I want to know that it's going to help people that I care about. It's going to help the community in indirect ways. And so ultimately, if you have all these mentors who are from the region and you have people that are coming from out of the region just for 3 months and then leaving, the whole sort of virtuous cycle breaks. Because as I was saying in the early days of Techstars,
Hmm.
you gave back and they became the next generation. But now what happens if the next generation is just going back to the Midwest or to New York or somewhere else? And then that sort of community of who are the people that are going to invest in that next generation go away. So essentially Techstars sort of lost its focus. In the early days, Techstars, it was really much more of like a franchise in the way that like every city ran it their own way and there was sort of a shared playbook of best practices, but they centralized it and sort of changed up how all of it worked. Um, and so that was part of why it started to lose steam in Seattle. But then ultimately, as Techstars ran more and more of these programs, they stretched themselves super thin with a business model that was around raising money from corporates to run a corporate program. And they just really couldn't afford to keep these city programs running. So they consolidated to only run a few of them. And unfortunately, Techstars Seattle was one of the ones that they decided to shut down as part of it. And all that being said, like, the program was run by great people. It added a lot of value, uh, and there are still great people in Techstars, and they've had some leadership changes. So I'm excited to see what happens and where it goes in the future. But as I said earlier, sometimes things just last for too long. Product market fit is not something that you achieve and then checkbox, we have it forever. Communities change, environments change, technology changes, and you always have to sort of be reinventing.
Exactly.
What is our product and what are we doing? And the product that Techstars was providing no longer had that sort of, I'd say, community market fit for Seattle, but it was still taking up space within the region. And again, the people who are running it were doing their best and a fantastic job to provide as much value as they could. But sort of the guardrails of Techstars' new centralized model just did not let them really provide the product that the community was asking for.
Got it. Got it.
So
I have so many questions, but I'll let maybe Peter chime in a little bit. I have so many
yeah,
questions about why people are leaving and a whole bunch of things, but I'll let maybe Peter take it
yeah, and
on.
I'm trying to figure out. So community's huge. Number one, you're a developer that got into community and got into entrepreneurship, and everybody's going to make the joke that developers don't talk to people and they squirrel away. And
But
I
that's
get
what
the
they need to. That's what you learn is like get off your computer, talk to other people. You never know what you're going to learn and where it's going to go. So yeah.
no, exactly. An old mantra I picked up 20 years ago was never refuse an invitation, and that took me from being a developer into a path I wouldn't recommend for anybody else, but I'm not changing it for me. But yeah, certain type of strength. Anyway, you're talking about community, and you're talking about standing up these communities, and it seems like the success comes from grassroots and a little bit experience and a lot of determination in helping others and contributing what you have that might be different, even if it's not necessary, even if you're not better off than someone else, just for enrichment.
Mhm.
And that there's almost a critical failure point based on size. So as someone
Mhm.
from the Midwest, where we got a new beverage called a martini. They finally made it here. We're wouldn't even say we're slow adopters. We're non-adopters. It takes the homogenized fast food method to spread across the country and to have that kind of impact. But also, when you look at anywhere, and it's a grassroots movement, it's people that already know each other, or it's people that have a certain kind of or an ability to buy access. It's just strange to me to hear that there's like democratized platforms that can be built from those points of origin. And that's what I'm trying to gather. It's like what does a good community look like, and who's building it?
Yeah. So I would say like number one, I think there's a point in everything you just said there, which is like, can community be scalable? And I think the answer is that no, it can't. But I think you can sort of scale the best practices and then allow people in individual communities and nodes to make the product fit for them. because the way that a tech and startup community would function in Seattle versus Iowa versus New York, it's going to be entirely different because it's serving different purposes. So like, let's go back to Seattle specifically. Our biggest problem here is that we have so much talent. We're like the number 2 in the world for AI talent. Like the technical talent here is through the roof. But at the same time, nobody is connected in the right ways, where that amazing person with a great business insight is not connected to the person who's telling, is saying, I really want to leave Amazon and I want to work at a startup, or I want to co-found a startup. And these two people are in the same city, like, ships in the night, not running into each other. So we have that problem here. But in other areas, in other cities, I think the problem that you could have is entirely different, which is that you don't have the talent. So what is the purpose of a community? The purpose of community there could just be around knowledge sharing, which is that, like, we don't have enough skilled and experienced people here. So we need to take all the people with the experience and then layer on new curious folks around them. So those are just sort of two different examples, but I think you would tailor different programming, different events, and things depending on the different need for your city. And I think too, like, if you think about the evolution of that, let's say it's a random city in the Midwest, and your challenge is what I just laid out about there not being enough talent. And sort of your early community efforts could be around attracting talent and upskilling people so that you can start growing a startup community. But then the events, programs, other stuff that you have, maybe those should get blown up and go away, because now you have a new challenge where, now that you have a lot more people who are able to do this, maybe your biggest challenge is like, wow, now we have a lot of people who want to build companies, but our challenge is we don't have enough people who want to invest in entrepreneurs and early startups. So how do we create new communities and events around attracting those individuals? And so, like, I think that is very much always a thing on my mind, which is like, you have to work backwards from what does the community need, and then you can take best practices from what you see people doing in other areas to try to build that and evolve your community.
Right. And I want to kick one misnomer to the side. All regions, all cities have talent. It's about building the culture and being a tastemaker and showing the possibility, I think, is the big difference, getting people to take the leap. And you're right. Seattle's huge on AI. We're bio and life sciences here in St. Louis. We're one of the leaders in the country. I joke about how backwards we are, and we are in some ways, but in most ways not. It's interesting because you're talking about this evolution and changing the product market fit, and changing. Usually when you're changing your product market fit, you're also changing your ICP. And with communities, is it one of those things where you kind of take off as a group and you become a family and you go on this journey? It's the Oregon Trail. Do you ever abandon your roots? Like, is it possible to do it? Like, how does it evolve? How does it continue to grow? Do you
Yeah. So
reach a critical mass? Is it a refresh? Like, how does that work?
Well, I think there are many ways that it happens. I mean, I was having this conversation with the leadership team of Foundations the other day, of that, we have the belief that building a strong community is about identifying and empowering culture carriers. So the folks who are sort of going to remain the heart of the community, full well knowing that there's going to be other individuals who are coming in and out at different times. They may be very involved, they may give a lot during this period of time, but then they may just be not involved at all. Like, our lives all have different rhythms to them, and you can't expect that everybody's rhythm is always going to be aligned and always in the same place. So take one step back. So when I look at Seattle, and I'll talk about like the thesis for Foundations. So Foundations is a invite only community of tech founders and operators in the Seattle area with a physical space. And so what we're working back from is what we believe is needed in Seattle and missing, and will lead us to a great, startup flywheel, is we need people in all different stages of their entrepreneurial journey to be spending time with each other. And in a way that is not sort of transactional or purposeful. We need folks who have just quit Amazon or Microsoft, who are just got back from Y Combinator, who just raised a couple $1,000,000 but really don't have product market fit. We need those people. We need the people who are currently operating and building businesses, and we need the people who are exited, been successful before, maybe you're looking to give back, and we need excuses to get them all together in the same place. And what we identified from talking to literally hundreds of folks was that there was a unique way to do this right now in Seattle specifically, which is that those first early stage folks that we talked about, we know that starting a company is lonely. It can be hard to stay motivated. You don't yet have your culture. There's no internal drive that's happened yet. So early stage startups love working around each other so they can feed off of each other's energy and they can push each other. And right now, uniquely, in a post-COVID environment, there's lots of operators of, Series A, Series B, Series C companies who don't have offices. And what they're looking for is a place that they can use as a third space. There's even some folks who now have offices, but they're like, sometimes I want to be working away from the rest of the company, but I still want to be around other people. I still want to have, that sort of communal energy where I can step away from my company to be part of it. And then additionally, there's now a lot of folks who are, you know, retired or looking to invest and saying like, hey, how do I plug into the community now that Techstar's gone? I don't know where to go. So what we identified was that we could create a community and invite people in with slightly different rhythms and rules from all of those different stages and get them to spend time in a space together. And they might be there for really different reasons. People could be, this is my office, I'm here every day. For other folks, it's, I live over on the east side and I have meetings in Seattle, every couple weeks, and I need a place to be my home base during it. For other folks, I mean, it really can be as simple as like, um, I'm retired, but you know what? Like, I have friends who are still actively working. A lot of times they come to Seattle and they're like, "Hey, where can I work out of? Like, where can I take my meetings?" And I want a place that I can host them. And like all of those different rhythms are are different for each of those different people. But if we get everyone into the same physical space, magic starts to happen. And look, we haven't even launched the space yet. We launched at the end of the month, but we started slowly inviting people into the community to be members, and we're already seeing like really amazing things happen in terms of like, how did we not know each other? We've in fact like two folks found co-founders already, and I mean it's just like it's awesome to watch all this unfold.
Is
Yeah,
I,
I'm trying to do a math. I'm just trying to define this in my own head. And by the way, I'm happy that Aviel, you invited me for that community. But here's a question to you. So I was listening to what you were saying to Peter.
Mhm.
Is community, is a successful community determined by five factors, right? The first factor is they should be givers. They should be people who are willingly able to give time, energy, whatever it is. They are paying it forward. They're ready to give, and they should be available. The second is the people who are able to accept, or the takers, right? And
Mhm.
that could be early stage founders, whoever is able to accept that mentorship, accept that advice, and actually be able to go implement.
Mhm.
You also mentioned about investors. There needs to be someone who is sponsoring, some of this give and take part of it. There has to be some connectors. You mentioned about someone like AVL is needed. Something like co-working space is needed. Something like a meeting space is needed. Which can help that serendipitous connections to happen. I'm guessing the last one that you mentioned is about the observers, people who come and watch. They may not have anything to give or anything to take at this moment, but they're coming here to learn, and maybe in about 2 3 months time. So is that five factors: givers, takers, investors, connectors, and observers? Are those the essential ingredients? And I'm trying to in my head on why is
I
community in
like that.
Seattle.
I like that framework a lot. I think I would switch investors. I would prefer the term like enablers, which is I think you because it's not always just about investing and giving you money. It can be opening certain doors and giving insights and other things in that way. I think
Mhm.
it's really interesting about when you say with the takers. I think there's a little bit of a dual function where like the early stage companies that are seeking mentorship, they also peer mentor each other and they give each other energy. And so like I don't think
Yeah.
there's really any in a good community, there's no pure taker. And I think that actually becomes a problem is that if you have someone that's only draining energy out of the community, you don't have a flywheel because you need an infinite
Yeah.
energy machine, which is that as more energy comes in, more comes around. And then I'd say in that framework too, I struggle a bit with observers because I actually believe that observers can kill communities depending on what the structure is because they can be
Mm.
more,
Okay.
tourists, they can be drains on the community because I think people want to when they engage, they want to leave a physical experience
Enrich.
feeling more energized than before they arrived. And
Yeah.
people who are coming in with nothing really to offer, um, can make you feel drained. And so we had a group that I helped found in Seattle called Venture Out, which was designed to help folks make the transition from working at Microsoft and Amazon to become first-time founders. And what we saw was there were so many people who would sign up to say, like, I want to engage in this community. I'm definitely going to quit and start a company. I'm definitely going to do that. But they kept coming to the meetups. They kept doing that, but they never left their cozy job and started something. And they became drains on the community because they were tourists who were coming in, who were getting their dopamine hit of being entrepreneurial and that from those events. And then the next thing we know, the majority of events is just those people, and everybody else is now left. And you're like, what the hell just happened? So I am, there's a reason why, and I think you're asking Seattle specifically. I think we have a lot of observers. We have a lot of startup curious folks. We have a lot of entrepreneurs. And so that's why this is an invite only community, because the reality is that, while I want it to be as inclusive as possible, I have fears that letting those folks into the community when they are not really ready to transition. But to the point, you do need something though, where like what happens in the Bay Area is that you are always one degree of separation from somebody who's wildly successful. Like you see them, you're like, hey, she's not smarter than me. Like he's not, better than me. Like, why am I not like them? And that's great. So it's awesome for you to see that you could be that founder. You could be this. And so we need ways to do that. But at the same time, I think if you focus too much on that, it degrades the community and its quality.
Yeah. So I think maybe it's a good start with the framework. I'm learning from you on this front. But if there are the first 4, if they're not available, right? If there's a depleted resourcing on the first 4, and the number of observers, if that increases, that kills the community. So I think, if I understand correctly what you're saying, the givers and takers have to be there. Investors have to also be there, or sponsors, whatever you want to call that. Someone who's giving even pizza and Coke, even for something of that sort, or arranging for for people to come together. What is the problem with givers? Why are there not many givers here? I mean, there are so many successful.
Okay, so I mean, this one's actually this is an easy
or they're too big.
It's an easy answer in Seattle. So like when let's compare Seattle and the Bay Area. Who are usually the givers? These are people who have found success in their life and they want to give back to the next generation. So much of that wealth in the Bay Area is founder wealth. They made their money from starting a company, taking a really big risk. That's what happens in the Bay. In Seattle, they made their money by being early at Microsoft or early at Amazon or something else. The money is not entrepreneurial. It may be technical, but it's not legible. They're not going to go out of their way to be like, you know what I want to do? Like, I miss spending time with founders and doing that. Those people don't exist. So instead, where their money goes is lake houses and boats and sort of things that I was joking with someone where it's like building their own little mini castle on Lake Washington, and making the world smaller and smaller and smaller. In the Bay, it's like, no, what I want to do is I want to go talk to founders. I want to invest. I want to do this. It's like, why are you doing this? It's like, because it's fun. It's my hobby. My hobby is not boating. My hobby is helping early stage founders, and it sustains me. And so we just don't have nearly enough of those folks in the community. Like and in fact, like a lot of those folks, are now like, when I think back to like that was sort of Kirby, and now Kirby has a venture fund. So he's figured out a way to turn that into his full-time job. But like, there were not a lot of those folks who were like former founders, angel investors, like single hand, can you count the Kirbys in Seattle? So,
No, I think that's very interesting. So I think, Seattle has the connectors, people like you, people like Kirby, people like, ones who are hosting these meetups every other week. But it is unidirectional. Someone is saying something and someone is taking it, but the contribution is not that this thing. For example, there was this session at UW. I think there were about 4 or 5 investors. The whole room was packed with all the founders. But the questions were about, how do I manage the cap table? Should I go take investor capital, or it became more tactical. I mean, something of that sort. If there's a healthy community where you sit down together, it gets resolved much faster. But because it doesn't exist, when someone has this conversation, it's about like 100, 200 people now all coming and talking about tactical things rather than how do we go build a larger community. So I think,
Hmm.
I think there's something that you're doing which probably makes it a lot more interesting on the ground here.
Hmm.
And I'm excited. uh, I have one question about the connectors.
Hmm.
The when I say the connectors, I'm still going in my head about the framework.
Yeah, yeah.
There are many investors here who are hosting their own events, but they're all individualized events, right? So there's one, like Madrona would do this, or PSV might do this, Thinkfish might do something else. Like there are investors, sure enough, there are not as many of them as in Bay. They're all doing individual things. Then there are studios and accelerators who are running their own events. Then there are, so what's the role of a connector? Why are these so siloed
Well,
that
I
there's
think
a
there's most
demarcation?
connectors. I think are themselves like they're. I don't know the connectors stand on their own. There's in some within the investors or enablers, there are connectors. Within the givers, there
Yeah,
are connectors. Um, and I think that so what's interesting about foundations is that there is all of those like VC fund studios that you mentioned, pretty much all of them, at least one partner from that is a member of foundations. And that was
yeah,
very, purposeful because I want this to be something that's owned by all of the community. So event isn't like, hey, this is my event, this is for me. But I think what gets tricky with connections is like when you connect someone, you are either spending or accruing social capital. There is some transfer of energy and a connection of made. Like there's an agreement to give time in one way or the other. And I think a
yeah,
lot of people, especially, and I do this as like founders co-op as with that hat on, is like I always think about like at the end of the day, I'm trying to back great founders and find great founders. And so, sometimes you can be transactional with your connections of like, I don't want to connect you with this person because then I may not get what I want out of this. So like there ends up being this slippery slope where if you
yeah,
if you are both an enabler investor and a connector, it,
yeah,
it becomes problematic. So like you're not gonna find you're not gonna have a bunch of Madrona people at a PSL event and a PSL people at a Madrona event.
yeah.
And it just it's simply for all the reasons that I just laid out. And so
Correct,
the
correct,
general idea was like
correct.
what Techstars used to serve was it was where everybody could be in the same room. And like so that is what Foundations is here to replace is that there can be a place that everyone, no matter where you raise money from or who you're investing as, all belongs in this same space. And our shared
Yeah,
goal is
yeah,
that we know that a rising tide lifts all boats. So a better Seattle for early stage founders means a better Seattle for investors, means a better Seattle for everyone. And so that is sort of the
yeah.
the the happy path that's behind this. But I think to answer your question, that is the reason why you see these little silos of connectors because you're connecting, but you have motivations and you have agendas, and you're not purely connecting based off of um, I'm just trying to do the best for you. And I think
Yeah.
it's hard. Like I struggle with this myself. Even if I'm like, I want to do this because I just want what is the best for you, you're still like, oh shit, but I have a fund. And then if like this person ends up taking money from that and not from me, I'm gonna look like an idiot. And like, but you have to just let those things go because at the end of the day, like I said, like where Seattle is as an ecosystem is rising tide lifts all boats. We should not have a scarcity mindset. Our issue is that there is like disorganized abundance, and what we need to do from a community aspect is help organize it, help it move in the different places so that it can find success.
I think that's the right word, disorganized abundance. And I'm going in my head. Why abundance
I can't.
because
It's breaking up a little bit.
I
Peter
attended
can.
the Northwest Tech, where more than 300 plus JP Morgan's offices. We're meeting at various other places in Seattle, so which means that people are taking off from their work for 2 or 3 days, and there's more than 300, 400 plus founders who
Hmm.
are sitting down almost for the entire day on various sessions, which means there's no dearth of startups. There's no dearth of founders here. And there were not many investors there. There's mostly, hey, this is what we're building. This is how you should manage your cap table, your finances, your books, there's a whole bunch of other things that's coming around. Let me ask this of you, maybe Maybe that's the difference between Seattle foundations or something else. What do you see, is as the path forward when it comes to, uh, you know, maybe let me reword this question a little bit. There's a tremendous amount of growth in terms of these accelerators and studios and incubators,
Mhm.
and these, and many times, even Techstars has gone into the incubators and accelerators route as well. Could you maybe explain this a little bit about what are these, how are they different from each other?
Yeah,
And for a nascent, I shouldn't say even nascent, a mid-sized startup community that's coming up in Seattle, I'm sure that's happening in Denver. I'm sure that's happening in Cincinnati, various places in, outside of the top two areas, right? So Seattle and New York. If you eliminate that, there's still a large amount of startup
yeah,
communities across the board. How do you see them? What are they? How are they different? And
sure.
how can they still build the community around it?
Yeah, so I'd say there's accelerators, incubators, and studios. First off, I want to say Foundations is none of those. It is sort of trying to be the connective tissue and glue around those things. And all three of those are a little bit nebulous, but I'll give you my interpretation of when I hear the word, what I sort of think that they are. I think of an accelerator as something where I am a founder who has started a specific company. I had the idea, I'm doing the building, and what I need is I need to see around corners and I need to accelerate my pace of success or failure. So, like, very quickly find product market fit or find failure. And that is what an accelerator does. And how does it do that? You come in, you get a mixture of best practices, mentorship, and guidance, but most importantly, you get connections. Your network is rapidly expanded, so you can very quickly get to the right people, whether they be advisors, customers, mentors, to help you figure out, are you on the right path or the wrong path? Because time is an entrepreneur's most valuable resource. And I think that'll be a trend across all three of these. All three of these are designed to be things to save time. So that's what an accelerator is. What I would call an incubator um, is something where you've got a little bit of an idea, it's not quite there, you need thought leadership and partnership, and you're really trying to figure out what could this thing be. So it's not yet a company, it's not yet an idea, it's just like a seedling. And I think incubators can be the most sort of amorphous, because sometimes a venture firm can incubate someone, and then is that an incubator or not? Sometimes it can really just be like light mentorship, but the general idea is, I think of incubator as like, we don't know anything. Like, we really are like, this is the earliest stage and we want to test some ideas. And then a studio is like a group of high functioning builders, a lot of people who have been there or done that, who are coming up with ideas and pairing those ideas with other entrepreneurs and helping them sort of skip the first steps of building and customer development. So it's sort of like an amazing way of saying, like, hey, I want to really quickly validate this with help and support, and I want to sort of launch this company with product market fit and with funding. So it can be a great fit for second time founders. And then also it can be a great fit for folks who don't necessarily have an idea, but want to build or want to lead. And you can come into a studio and you can be like, what ideas do you guys have? What are you working on? I would love to lead that and spin it out and take it from there. And so, like, all of these are sort of designed for the founder in mind. For one, it's like, hey, you've started something. Let's help you accelerate towards where you need to go. For others, it's like, hey, you want to do something, but you don't know what to do. Let's give you a hug. Let's help you. And then the other is like, hey, you want to get to building, but there's certain parts of this that you want to skip. Whether it's the idea phase, the validation phase, the building phase, come do it with us as a studio. And so I think it's awesome that all these things exist, because you can start companies, venture scale companies, in a wide variety of ways. And so a story I want to tell is, we had someone earlier in the month get introduced to me. He's like, hey, I heard about Foundations. I moved to Seattle during COVID. And, look at the LinkedIn, and he's been a successful builder and like engineering leader. I'm like, this guy's awesome. He's like, he knows no one in the community. So what's the first thing I do? I'm like, okay, what I'm gonna do is, like, come in, let's hang out. And now I'm going to intro you to the AI2 incubator. I'm going to intro you to PSL. I'm going to intro you to Madrona Venture Labs. I'm going to intro you, like, to Kirby, to like other like early stage VCs. And within a week, meetings with all of them. Now he's an EIR at AI2 with a co-founder, and they're both back hanging out in the space sometimes.
Right.
And it's like, because for him that was the right fit. But so when I think about what Foundations does is like, how can you be the glue between all those different things? So
Got it. Yeah, I think someone very recently explained this to me, and maybe you can help me understand. They gave me, a simple way to think about this, right? I'll probably validate with you. If you're going to an accelerator, you know how to build.
mhm.
As a founder, you know how to build, but you want to accelerate, and you give away 7% of stake, right? If you don't know how to build, you might give a little more or a little less. So, but if you have an idea and you need help in building, so you put out some cash for building, and that could be a studio, but you pay them only 5%, of the equity. But you are much early stage, and you're figuring out, because you don't know whether you're going to build or not, then you pay less, 3% equity. So 7%
Yeah.
equity, 5% or 3%. Is that how
Well, it's hard
is
because
that
the
how the dilution?
studios can be wildly different. Like it can serve the purpose of I have an idea, I want help building, I want to do
Yeah.
this with a studio, and then there's some economic arrangement. So you're using
Oh,
like your
that's right.
engineering
Sure.
resources,
Yep,
go to
yep.
market resources. But
Yeah.
then there's others, which is the studios themselves come up with ideas, and then you as a founder can be like, "Oh, this is a really cool little product or idea that you
Mm.
guys have. Can I spin it out?" And so like
Yeah.
it can serve. I would say that the studio model is maybe the more flexible, which is it's like it's
Yeah.
really designed for both. And I think every studio is a little bit different. And then I'd even say like, you know, the AI2, incubator, it has some aspects of a studio, some aspects of an incubator. Like that's what I'm saying. All
Yeah.
of this stuff
Yeah.
ends up really, really nebulous. And I think it's hard because like every single one does things a little bit differently and is the right or wrong fit for different people at different times. Like MVL,
Yeah.
PSL, and
Yeah.
AI2, which are sort of the three best known in the Seattle ecosystem, they're all very different and they're all very good at what they do. And I think it's
Yeah.
awesome that you have all those options. Well, we were joking earlier though,
Yeah.
what is wild is now there's no accelerator here. I think that's actually okay because just do YC. It's not like why do we need something here? But there's not a lot of early stage capital. So if you are someone who doesn't want to do any of those things, you just want to raise some money to build your
Yeah.
business.
Totally.
We don't have enough of that here at the moment.
Correct. Yeah. Makes sense. Peter, any thoughts on that, or anything else?
I think you're muted.
You are muted. Hello there. I don't know why. Can you speak? You try.
Right now, let's try it now.
There we
There you
go.
go.
Now
There you
we're
go.
Okay. I have no idea. Sometimes StreamYard just decides it wants to drop audio. But no, I'm a sponge for once. I don't have a lot to I just want to absorb it. And entrepreneur in residence, is that somewhat of a studio thing? I love that term.
Yeah.
That's a
So
job I'd love to have.
I mean, it's wild. So like we have that's so loaded. So first off, Foundations, it's a member community, and so for members, you use this as your third space. So it shouldn't be your full-time office. But then we have Founders in Residence, which is for 6 months. You can use the space as your full-time office space, and we have some, community events and other stuff that are just perfectly tailored for you. So we're using the term Founder in Residence. Then there's Entrepreneur in Residence. Sometimes an Entrepreneur in Residence is someone at a VC fund who is not quite ready to found a company and is currently helping them evaluate. Maybe he's going to join as a CEO of someone they invest or is going to invest in, or is going to start his or her own company that then the venture fund's going to invest in. Then there's studios who have entrepreneurs in residence, and those are basically like founding CEOs in waiting who are working on a bunch of different ideas at once and trying to see which is the one that they're going to latch onto and spin out of the studio. Um, Incubators have entrepreneurs in residence to sort of do the same thing as studio. Like I think at the end of the day, really what it usually means is like I don't want to have and sometimes it can come with like a stipend. It usually does where it's like I don't want to have a full-time job, but I'm not quite ready to found or start the company. So I'm in this like in between phase, and you become an entrepreneur in residence, and it can look like a wide variety of different things. But it does get really nebulous because like entrepreneurs in residence at VC funds sometimes become venture capitalists instead of founders. So it
Yeah.
gets a little confusing.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So
So go ahead. Go ahead.
Guru Rush had made a comment a while back about there's a tactical nature that some of these spin into versus organic build. And it sounds like there's a membership cost depending on the organization, or a tenancy required, or even giving up stakes in an organization. How does that, when there's a governing body that that's pulling skin into the game,
Yeah.
like, who is this a fit for? What is the drive? What is the driver? How does somebody make the right bet on what organization to align with, and forfeit what they're going to forfeit, and get what they want? I'd hate to be 6 months in and then have everything
Man,
change because I was the minority.
this happens all the time, and I think that is the really hard part, which is that you just don't know. Because look, when in building an early stage startup, the vast majority of what's going to make you successful or make you fail is unknowable and out of your control. And so what you really want to do is you sort of do your best to pick what makes sense at the moment. But you are right. Every one of these entities has its own separate business model and therefore has a product and service of it, which is like, how do we make money? We either make money by taking equity in the company, by having, preferred access rights to invest in the companies, by monetizing by you're paying us for access to our space or to our community. And I think this is what's always hard. And so for foundations, we raise money from just folks around the community so that we do not have to come up with a business model for 2 years of operations, because what we're trying to do is find what's the right product for the community. And the second we lock on a business model, which is we charge you for desk space, we charge you membership dues, we forced you to take an investment from us, we take equity in your company, suddenly the product and the whole community and everything becomes in service of that business model. So ultimately, if we go back to Techstars' initial business model was, we take, initially it was just 6% equity in all these companies. And the challenge they then ran into with that business model was like, hey, cash flow is hard here, because you don't see the money. You're investing at the earliest stage, so you don't see anything for 12 years. We need to find other ways to make money. How do we do it? Oh, well, we'll start charging corporates money to run these accelerators for them. So we still get our equity in the companies, but we also get operational cash to keep scaling and doing it. It's like, okay, well, then what's the really big business here? Well, then the really big business is like, let's run as many of these as possible and get as much equity in as many companies as possible. And then we've basically indexed all early stage startups. But then, so that becomes the business model you're in service of. But then the flip side is like, well, now this isn't as exclusive anymore. So if it's not as exclusive anymore, the highest quality folks aren't as attracted to it anymore. Because if rather than it being like, I'm one of the 30 companies that is a Techstars graduate, I'm one of 300 companies or 3,000 companies, that means a lot less. And then you're like, well, that's not worth 6% anymore. That's only worth 1%. And then you're like, well, shit, well, we can't start doing 1% because then the business model breaks. So like, I mean, it's the same in these like models as it is with businesses. Is like, if you overfit to your business model, if you don't evolve it and change it, like, you disrupt yourself. And so like, I think why did the studio model come up is because I think the accelerator model sort of blew itself up in some ways, and that opened up the opportunity for the studio model. And then what's been really cool is watching people iterate on the studio model rather than locking it in, like the accelerator model, where, like, I know MVL has iterated a lot on what they've done. PSL has done that as well. AI2 is now doing that. And so I think it all has to be sort of living, and like, we're figuring out what's the right business. We're willing to change our business model in service of the product rather than locking that business model in. But I get to your point. It's challenging as a founder where you're like, I'm going to start having all these conversations and I don't understand the trade. I don't understand what I'm paying for. But I would argue that maybe that's okay. Just have a few more conversations. And I think ultimately what matters is pick the right community and the right people that you get along with, that you want to have in your life for the next decade. Because I think that's something people really don't understand with like joining a studio, taking money from someone, taking investments from someone. Like, you're going to be with them for a decade plus if you're successful. And I think at the end of the day, if you're successful, you're not going to be kicking yourself over like, I could have gone with these other folks and had 2% more equity in my company. You want to pick the right people. for you, not optimize for those things around the edges.
Right. All paths don't have the same ending. So yeah, I totally get that. And entrepreneurship's weird. It's a terminal disease, and I guess if you get a group that's going to form the same trauma bond that you have, that's going to be a solid
You nailed
deal.
it.
So, I mean, you were talking about the founders in residence, and I just keep thinking of squatters, which cracks me up. But uh, what is appealing to you then? So let's say somebody wants to join an organization. You said you're invite only. What makes somebody invitable?
So this is something that we are actively trying to figure out. So I'll tell you what our plan is. So we have there's four of us, me and three early stage founders who previously ran a meetup group called Cloud Zero here in Seattle, and then I formed a board that consists of another investor, a very successful operator and angel investor, and then two other successful entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, and what we're doing is we're using our own network and the people that we think should be part of this as the folks like talk to us, and then we all get together as a brain trust, and we're going to slowly add people into the community. But what we're trying to figure out is what are the characteristics of the folks that we want to be part of this community. So we're working on like, what are sort of our core values that we want to work back from? What are the traits of the people that we think would be the most sort of successful and valuable members of the community? But we're not trying to come up with that first. What we're instead saying is, who are a lot of the best people that we know who are willing to engage with us and put their energy into this. We're inviting them in, and we're observing, and then we're going to codify that and turn that into something that'll help people self-select in or out, and will help us select. But we're doing it organically.
Yeah, maybe if I can add a little bit to what Peter's asking. So, um, flipped a little differently, what are the needs? What are the needs of an? I'll speak from an entrepreneur or founder standpoint. I think there are three high level needs. The first high level need is figuring out, should I or should I not do something,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is, or why should I do something, or are there any alternatives? Founders would need, to brainstorm, that kind of a strategy with mentors, with various advisors and all of that. Then the second rung below that is, uh, I don't know this. Who can help me? Right? Who
Mm-hmm.
can help me file a patent? Who can help me, get a SOC 2 compliance? Who can help me get,
Mm-hmm.
all of them are, how can I do that? If I don't have that capability within me, who from the community can help me do that? And I think the
Mm-hmm.
third part is, let's do it, right? Let's go build it. Let's go do it. Like, who do I hire? Where do I find the right people? Right? For example, I wasn't aware that there are so many interns that's available from UW that you can tap into. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
aware that there are so many other people who want to work in startups, but are not available on LinkedIn. If you don't know how to go find them, right? So, like, hiring, essentially, it's all about building. I want to go build it. I want to go build a team. I want to go build this thing. Where do I go
Mm-hmm.
find these people? So I think there are these three levels: the why part of it, who can help, and let's do it, right?
Yeah.
So all these three, if I'm just quantifying in my head, the most difficult part is the first part, right? Why should I or should I not? You need mentors, mentors for that.
Yeah.
I think, Aviel, what you're doing is a marvelous thing of bringing together these mentors on figuring out that why, right? And that's like, it's a push and pull. Conversations need to happen. It may not be as serendipitous as possible. It has to be a lot more organized. But the second two parts, like, hey, who can help me on SOC 2? Who can help me on patent? Who can help me on filing or creating an incorporation? Who can help me in cap table? Who can help me run the fund? All of these are small services that can be connected together.
Yep.
Uh, you know, uh, most founders spend inordinate amount of time in figuring out who can help me do these things. Right? I don't want to do all of these things myself. So I think, and the third part, of course, about the hiring, actually building it out, trying it out, take it to this thing. I think there's a fourth part, which I believe is where, is Bay Area, excels at this. You have a concept, you can actually go connect to potential prospects during these meetups, right? And they can be your potential customer, from 0
Yeah.
to
Well,
10, 0 to
and a lot
50
of that can be
customers.
the value of like accelerators and incubators.
Right.
I was talking with a company yesterday who went through the Neo Accelerator, which is a
Yeah.
virtual accelerator, and all of their first customers are other people who are going through that accelerator with them, and that's a common pattern with
Correct.
YC, and it's awesome.
Correct.
And I know you know something about this. So.
I know, I do. But I think so. Those are the four layers. And I think I'm guessing, as you go through this journey, Aviel, I would love to join you, of course, in person to figure this out. But I think there's a lot of people in the three buckets below that's
Mhm.
available in Seattle. There's not many on the first bucket. Hey, I want to go run this idea by someone, right? Should
Ah,
I or should I not do it? What's the
mhm.
cost of picking this particular idea? And
Yep.
for that, we need startup founders. We need someone who's actually been there, done that, and essentially, it's a give and take of those ideas there. But I know we are out of time. If somebody else is still hanging out with us, send us a note. Peter, Aviel, and I, we went on marvelous journey on these conversations. And
Thank you. This is a lot of
Aviel,
fun.
maybe, yeah, it is a lot of fun. Do you want to kind of do a closing note on how does anyone reach out to you? How does anyone apply
Yeah.
if there is an application process?
Yeah, so for foundations, there's a mailing list right now. That's the right way. So if you go to seattlefoundations.org, just sign up for the mailing list, and we'll keep you in the loop on how to get involved as we roll out and figure out how things are going to really work. We're a startup ourselves, but for me, I'm my first name on Twitter. I'm my first and last name on LinkedIn. I thought that's the right way to connect.
Okay, absolutely. We'll actually put all of that in maybe summary notes after the event. We'll take out the recording and post that as well. Aviel, it
Awesome.
was wonderful to host you on this one. Peter and I are excited that what you're building, and I'm super excited to be actually part of the community and look forward for your launch. And thank you so much for your time.
Likewise. All right.
And now, Guru Raj, I want to, since we've got a minute, how are you giving back? What's your plan when the doors open and you come marching in? What are you doing, bud?
Well, it's up to Aviel. I am a volunteer. I can provide him that, hey, I can be a volunteer to. There is almost about 300 to 400 startups here. Most of them are ready to offer free startup credits. They're ready to help onboard. Many of them are also ready to become customers. So the fourth part of the equation, wherein if there's someone who's a startup, they need access to tools, they need access to customers. There is a healthy community here on the ground, and I can probably work with AVL to
Yeah, and
connect
and I
those
think, look, it's
dots.
just hard. It's really difficult. You can't look at these things transactionally. I think it's really like when you show up with the
Right.
intent to say, like, with a service mindset of how can I help you? I'm not thinking about what am I getting out of this. Good things just
Right.
happen. And I think that's what's
Yeah.
always hard when I try to articulate foundations to people. Like, what, like this doesn't make any sense, and it's like I get that, but you experience it when you're around other people who are smart, who are capable, and they approach you with that mindset of like, how can I'm just thinking of ways that I can help you. You may not even know what you need help with, and like that's going back to where we started the conversation. That is how
Yeah.
you manufacture serendipity, is you get
Yeah.
people with that mindset together.
That Aviel said it better. That is what I want to do.
There you go. Be a community
Yeah.
builder. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go close the stream
All
now.
right.